Welcome into the Commanders Report live show. I'm your host, Jack Sperry. It is Super Bowl week, and unfortunately, the Washington Commanders are not participating in this weekend's festivities, even though that was the expectation heading into the 2025 campaign. But now we are on a journey to rebuilding this Commanders roster here in 2026. And we got some great stuff to talk about on today's show. First up, the latest news and rumors surrounding the Washington Commanders. We're talking a lot about trade stuff today in our first segment. Then we'll get into my perfect offseason plan. That is the segment that we lovingly refer to as the Beast here on the Commanders Report, because it's going to be a bit of a longer one. We go from everything from roster cuts to trades to free agency all the way to a 7-round mock draft. It's going to be an absolute beast of a video coming up here second. And then, of course, like we always do on the Commanders Report live show, we give you an opportunity to get on the show and ask a question. So if you guys want to get your questions in for today's mailbag, all you have to do to get your question on the show for free is use hashtag Commanders in the live chat room, or you guys can super chat to get on the Q&A guaranteed. The only way you can guarantee your question gets on the mailbag, guys, is if you super chat, and it doesn't matter what dollar amount, $2, $5, $10, $20, it doesn't matter. If you guys want to get on the show today and on the mailbag, and you want to guarantee your question gets on the mailbag, send in a super chat of any dollar amount. Otherwise, you can put your question in alongside hashtag Commanders for a chance to get on the show for free. Now, Mr. Ponzi, we'll bring him on here. Ponzi, good afternoon to you, my friend. And certainly right now the big question with the Washington Commanders is, can they get back to Super Bowl contention? Because this time last year, the Commanders were just eliminated from the playoffs, and everyone's feeling really good about this team. Everyone has Super Bowl expectations. Everyone is talking about, rebuilding and revamping in the 2025 offseason and expecting this team to, play in this game that we're going to see on Sunday between the Seahawks and Patriots. Unfortunately, we didn't even get close to that this year. It is a massive failure from start to finish here in 2025. So will they get back to where they were a couple years ago, and will we be back in the postseason in 2026?
I think the big question that the Commanders came into this offseason was, they're going to have to get at least two coordinators after they fired Cliff Kingsbury, and I think they did a great job on that front. Now the question comes to, who do they sign a free agency with all their cap space? And I think there's a lot of good free agents in the market this year that address some of their needs on defense. But I think it's going to come down to whether or not Dan Quinn Dan Quinn and Adam Peters, this brain trust of the Commanders, could really put together a really good offseason in NFL draft. Obviously, last season in the NFL draft, they got, some good players, Trey Amos and, Bill Krosky-Merritt. We're still, on the fence about Josh Connerly. But, I think it's going to come down to whether or not they're more active in free agency than they were last year.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that with Jaden Daniels being back healthy, Terry McLaurin being back healthy, the fact that Terry's going to have a full training camp with Jaden next year, I think those factors are going to play a big part in this team getting back to playing good football. I also like the hires that they made at the coordinator spots, and David Blau and, of course, Durante Jones. I think that you're upgrading your scheme on both sides of the ball, which is always good. I do believe in Dan Quinn as a culture builder here in Washington, and I appreciate the fact that, even though last year he could have just sat back and said, you know what, it was an injury-filled season, I'm going to run it back with the guys that I like in my building. It's like, no, like he's making changes, and he knows that I think, that his job's on the line next year. If we have another 5-win season or even a 6 or 7-win season, it's once again a disappointment, and Jaden Daniels doesn't look good, he's going to get fired, man. Like he's going to have to get this team to at least 9 wins or so, in my opinion. Probably get this team back into the postseason if he wants to save his job. And I think that, at least so far with the coaching changes that they've made, I'm a big fan of the David Blau and Durante Jones hires. And we'll see what they do in free agency and on the trade market and, of course, in the draft. But I think it's been a good start, and I do think that we'll be back in the playoffs next year.
I really do think that this is a division to do it, too. I mean, the Eagles, I think they'll probably take a step back next season. If Dallas can figure out their defense, I think they probably win the division. If not, it could be the Commanders. I think, everyone's going to crave about John Harbaugh, but I don't really think it's a good hire. As good as hire as many people think. And I think, if the Commanders can, win the games in front of them, they'll have, a third place schedule. If they can win the games in front of them, improve on defense, I think this offense can catch up if healthy. I just think the defense is that big question mark. But, Daronte Jones brings in a defensive, scheme that, does more with less. So I think, if the defense can, take an improvement with Daronte Jones and the offense, bounce back and Jaden Daniels stays healthy, there's no reason why this team can't finish second in the NFC East.
Or first, for that matter.
Exactly.
Like Daronte and that Brian Flores scheme has elevated a lot of players in that Minnesota Vikings defense. I mean, they're number one in EPA per play over the last 2 years under that system. And it's not like the Commanders have no talent on the defensive side of the ball. You've got your number one corner of the future in Trey Amos. You've got an up-and-coming linebacker in Jordan McGee. Deron Payne and Javon Kinlaw will both be back next year. Dorrance Armstrong will be back next year. Frankie Louvu, I think, is a really good fit for this Daronte Jones system that's going to be blitzing a lot. I think that fits his skill set perfectly. And obviously they need to make some changes roster-wise in free agency and in the draft, but they've got the resources to be able to make those moves as long as Dan Quinn and Adam Peters, show that they've learned their lessons from last offseason where they were very timid. It was very much a run-it-back style of season with a lot of older players. If they can get younger and faster and they can use some of those cap resources that they didn't last year. I mean, they had over $100 million to spend in free agency last year. They didn't spend all that much, honestly. So hopefully this year it's more of a splurging type of year. Try to get the most out of Jaden Daniels on his rookie contract and hopefully get us back in the postseason next year. Now, before we get into our first segment today, guys, I want to see who's in the chat. Spam those me's if you have liked the stream already. We got 140 people watching live. 27 people have liked the show. We got to get to at least 50 likes before we get into our first segment today. So if you haven't already, click that thumbs up icon. It helps out the show. And now we're going to give some shout outs out. We got Jasmine Gray in here, William Hancock, Zach is here, JG is here, my lovely fiance Cassie Voth is here, Impressive Highlights is here, JW Woldridge is here, Richard Barker. We've got Moby Munoz, we've got Sal, we've got the Slider, we've got what is this? Rennell Winchester. What's up, Rennell? Good to see you. We got the Kid Pixie. Got JD5 fan. We got a good crew of Commanders fans ready to get things going here on today's show. So I'm not going to make you guys wait any longer. Let's get into our first segment of today's show. The latest news and rumors surrounding the Washington Commanders is first up on today's program. We're going to be talking about 3 trade targets brought up by Bleacher Report for the Washington Commanders. Then we'll get into the Beast, which is our perfect offseason plan for 2026. Let you guys know what I would like to see done with the Washington Commanders this offseason. Then we'll get into the live mailbag with your questions. Again, if you haven't gotten a question in yet, got plenty of time to do so. Hashtag Commanders to get a question in on the show for free, or you guys can super chat any dollar amount to get on the mailbag this afternoon. So without further ado, let's get into our first segment of the day, the latest news and rumors surrounding the Washington Commanders. Welcome into the Commanders Report. I'm your host, Jack Sperry, and today we're going to be talking trade rumors as Bleacher Report has released a new article listing the top 3 trade targets for the Burgundy and Gold. I'm going to be reacting to all 3 names that they list in their most recent article here on today's show. But before we get into all the content today and we talk about some trade targets, make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already, because free agency is coming up in about a month here, guys, and everybody that the Commanders are being linked to, everything like that, we're going to let you guys know the latest buzz surrounding free agency. And of course, we'll have breaking news content every time the Commanders make a signing. Also, juicy trade rumors, just like we're doing on today's show. Exclusive draft content as well, with mock drafts every single week. Prospect rankings and positional rankings based on the team needs for the Commanders this year. All that content, guys, is 100% free. So make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already to never miss a video from us this offseason. All right, so let's start with the first name and the top name that Bleacher Report brings up for the Washington Commanders in terms of a blockbuster trade this offseason, which is Raiders edge rusher Maxx Crosby. If you guys didn't know, Jay Glazer from Fox Sports did report today that Crosby is likely never to play for the Las Vegas Raiders again, and he is likely to be traded at some point during the offseason. This is what Alex Ballantyne from Bleacher Report has to say about the potential pairing. The Commanders pulled off one of the most high-profile trades of the 2025 offseason. They were able to bring in Laramie Tunsil when franchise tackles rarely hit the trade market. That move didn't prevent them from a fall from the NFC Championship game to 5-12 this season, but that doesn't mean they shouldn't take the risk on swinging another big trade. A healthy Jaden Daniels in 2026 could have Washington right back in contention. They also have the cap space to get aggressive in bringing in a big contract that would enable them to chase big names like Maxx Crosby. Now, personally, guys, I don't really know if this would be smart. We've talked about Crosby on the channel before, and I've laid out my concerns with getting a guy like Mad Max. And it's not that, Maxx Crosby's not a good football player. He definitely is. But, he is somebody that's getting older, and he is somebody that we've seen, his production dip a bit when he's been on the field the last couple of seasons compared to where he was, say, in 2023 or 2022. Now, he did have double-digit sacks this year in just 15 games with the Las Vegas Raiders, had 28 tackles for loss, too, which is just an insane number. He's still a really good player. Do not get me wrong here, guys. But we look at where he is in his development and where he is in his career. He's over 30 years old, man, and he's an expensive player as well. So if you trade for him, you're going to be inheriting his contract. And honestly, it's compared to some of the other top flight edge rushers in the league, the Micah Parsonses, the T.J. Watts, the Myles Garretts of the world, it's actually pretty affordable for the Commanders if they end up trading for him. But you're already paying a couple 30-plus-year-olds, big money, including Terry McLaurin, not to mention he'd likely cost a first-round pick in any trade. There's probably going to be multiple teams that are interested in Crosby's services, and the Commanders would have to be the highest bidder, so to speak, in order to land him in a trade this offseason. And, personally, when you look at the draft picks that the Commanders have, if you give up your first-round pick in exchange for Maxx Crosby, you only have one pick in the top 100 this year, and you only have, 5 picks total, 4 of those being on day 3. A lot of those probably not going to be, long-term starters for your football club. So, trading away that number 1 pick for a 30-plus-year-old expensive edge rusher, I don't know is that exactly the right strategy for a team that's trying to get younger and faster this offseason. But on the other hand here, if the Raiders are willing to do something where it's like a trade swap situation where the Commanders could get maybe their second-round pick at number 36 overall, and they get Maxx Crosby in the deal, that would be the one scenario where I would maybe consider giving up the number 7 overall draft pick because, you're just moving down to the top of round 2, essentially. You can still get a really good player at number 36, maybe at safety or wide receiver or wherever you want to take a player there, but you also get one of the best edge rushers in the National Football League. So let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. Would you accept this trade if you were GM Adam Peters? Give me an A for accept or D for decline. Let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section for today's pinned question. In just a second here, I'm going to tell you about our sponsor today at Prize Picks. And while I tell you about our sponsor today, give me an A for accept or D for decline. And with that said, word from our sponsor today at Prize Picks. And guys, the big game in Santa Clara between the Seahawks and Patriots is almost here. There's no better way to cash in during America's biggest sporting event than Prize Picks, where it always feels good to be right. And since the big game is right around the corner, that also means it's your last chance to get into the football action before next year. So close the season out right with Prize Picks by getting $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. This week, Prize Picks has a special max discount for the big game live on the app right now. Drake May needs just 1 passing yard for the max discount to win. Just add another player to your lineup, and if your picks hit, you could cash in. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code CLNS. Get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Now, the second player that Bleacher Report lists as a trade target for the Washington Commanders this offseason is a very intriguing name here. It is Jaguars wide receiver Brian Thomas Jr., a first-round pick from just 2 seasons ago. This is what Alex Ballantyne has to say about the potential pairing. They should also be calling the Jacksonville Jaguars to ensure that they have plans to feature Brian Thomas Jr. next season. The second-year receiver saw a major dip in production after a stellar rookie season. He had a great connection with Jaden Daniels when they were teammates at LSU. Pairing quarterbacks with their former college targets has worked out well for teams recently. The Commanders should be willing to pay up to reunite Thomas and Daniels if the Jags are looking to trade him. And remember, guys, BTJ was reportedly available, and the Jags were taking calls on him at the trade deadline this year. And the reason for that is, his connection with Trevor Lawrence has just not been fantastic. You guys can see the year 2 drop off. And honestly, like when Trevor got hurt back in 2024, Brian Thomas Jr. played better when guys like Mac Jones and others were in there at quarterback. And, this year he had less than 100 targets. He played a little bit less, obviously, due to injury, but, his catches, split in half compared to what they were a year prior. The yardage wasn't nearly the same. He averaged, still 15 yards a catch, which is excellent, but he only had 2 touchdowns compared to the double-digit scores that he had in just his rookie season. So I agree with Bleacher Report here, where if the Jaguars are willing to let go of BTJ, I would prefer this reunion with Jaden Daniels over, say, a reunion with Brandon Ayuk, the one that is mostly linked with the Washington Commanders at this point. Just because, Brian Thomas Jr. is younger. He hasn't had the injuries that Ayuk has. He doesn't have the off-field antics, at least not yet, that Ayuk has shown throughout his career. And honestly, man, I think Jaden Daniels and Brian Thomas Jr. could dominate the NFL for years. And Brian Thomas Jr. has the body type. He has the physical skill set to be like a legit top 10, maybe even top 5, like number 1 alpha type of wide receiver down the road, okay? And the fact that you already have Terry McLaurin, who's that guy right now, means that Thomas doesn't need to be that guy immediately here in Washington. He can continue to develop and cultivate his relationship with Jaden, and it would also form arguably the best wide receiver duo in the National Football League between Terry McLaurin and Brian Thomas Jr. Another reason that I would love this is that BTJ is on his rookie contract, just like Jaden Daniels. So you're paying all this money to Terry McLaurin, but then you wouldn't be paying really that much for your number 2 receiver in Brian Thomas Jr. And by the time that you have to pay BTJ that big contract, Terry McLaurin's time in Washington is going to be coming to a close. So the issue with potentially getting Brian Thomas Jr. is that he will also be very, very expensive, all right? At least a first-round pick value. And for me, if I'm going to be making an offer to the Jaguars, it's going to be kind of similar to the one that I proposed for Maxx Crosby, where I'm going to do a pick swap, but it's going to be a more valuable pick swap because the pick that the Commanders are getting in return is lower. In fact, 20 picks lower than the Maxx Crosby one. So Brian Thomas would be valued higher in this trade than the Maxx Crosby one, and I think that's fair because of Thomas Jr.'s contract situation and the youth that he brings to the table. But what do you guys think about this trade here? If you are the GM, Adam Peters, is Brian Thomas worth this price tag where you're moving off the number 7 overall pick and you're moving down to number 56, but you get Brian Thomas Jr., a college teammate of Jaden Daniels's, for the foreseeable future on a rookie contract? Give me a yes or a no down there in the comment section to let me know what you guys think. Then we'll finish up the trade rumors here today with Tyreek Hill, where Bleacher Report listed the Cheetah as the third the trade target that they listed for the Washington Commanders here. And, Tyreek obviously, is coming off a major knee injury, and, he's got a big contract and all this different stuff. And the first thing you need to know about Tyreek Hill, guys, and why I'm not really even going to entertain this possibility is because Hill is going to be cut, okay? Miami is going to want to cut him, and, teams that are interested in acquiring Hill aren't going to want to acquire his massive contract, especially coming off that massive injury. So because they know Miami is likely to cut them, if Washington wants Hill, they just need to be patient and wait for the Dolphins to cut Tyreek Hill at some point during the offseason. And because he's got a massive roster bonus that kicks in, I think it's the 3rd day of the new league year, they have to make a decision on him sooner rather than later. So if you want Tyreek Hill, if you're the Commanders, just be patient and then, sign him to a free agency contract. And, as a free agent, he won't exactly be cheap, okay? Like, he is Tyreek Hill. He's going to want to get paid a pretty decent amount of money, especially because he'd be essentially taking on the number 2 wide receiver role here in Washington behind Terry McLaurin. So he'd have to be okay with that, and he's going to have to be okay with the amount of money Washington would be willing to offer him. But on top of the contract and all this different stuff, he's a speed threat at wide receiver that's going to be 32 years old and is coming off a major knee injury. So not only is that knee injury a concern in terms of is he going to be as fast and as explosive as he once was, but he's also getting older on top of that. So do you really want to invest invest a multi-year, 20 plus, 25 plus $million per season contract in Tyreek Hill? Personally, I think I'm probably passing on that, especially if there's better options out there. I'd much rather have Brian Thomas Jr. All right, I would even consider, getting Brandon Ayuk over Tyreek Hill at this point. All right, I would consider Jawan Jennings. Some of these guys that would cost a lot less but are more reliable than Tyreek Hill is at this point in his NFL journey. I'm not saying that I would say no necessarily if the team were to acquire him. I would be excited for the Cheetah to come here to Washington, D.C., but he's certainly not my number one target if I'm the Washington Commanders at this position this offseason. So you guys make the call for me down there in the comment section. Would you sign Tyreek Hill in free agency if you're the Washington Commanders? Give me an S if you would sign him, or type P if you're going to pass on him. Let me know what you guys think down there in the comments, and that'll be it for today's edition of Commanders Trade Rumors here on the Commanders Report. Greatly appreciate all of your guys' support. Make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already. Until next time, guys, go raise some hail. All right, coming up next, it is the annual beast, okay? The perfect 2026 Commanders offseason plan. Everything from roster cuts to extensions to a blockbuster trade to free agency all the way through the NFL draft. I'm going to be reconstructing this Washington Commanders roster from start to finish here in just a second. But I do want to give you guys a reminder here to get your questions in on the mailbag. Hashtag Commanders to get your questions on the show for free. Or you guys can super chat to get on the Q&A and get a guaranteed question on the show. And it can be any dollar amount, $1, $2, $5, $10, $20, does not matter. If you guys donate to the show, we're going to make sure to get you up on screen and on the mailbag here today. So without further ado here, Ponzi, if we're ready, let's get into our second segment of the day. I hope you guys enjoy it. We put a lot of work into this video every single year just because of the amount of different categories we go into, but it's also probably my favorite video I do during the entire schedule, man. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Here's my perfect 2026 offseason for your Washington Commanders. Welcome into the Commanders Report. I'm your host, Jack Sperry, and today it is the video that we lovingly refer to here on the channel as The Beast. I reveal my perfect offseason plan for the Washington Commanders here in 2026, and we're going to be covering everything from trades to free agency to a mock draft, roster cuts. We got it all for you guys, so grab a drink, settle in. It's going to be a longer video, guys, just a fair warning, but we are going to go through the entire Commanders offseason and what I would like this to look like as a fan of the Washington Commanders. Now, let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. What's one move that you really want the Commanders to make this offseason? What move do you think can help this team get over the top? Let me know what you guys think to kick off today's show. Now, just so you guys know, we got 5 categories of things that we're going to be breaking down in this perfect offseason plan. I'll go over a couple of roster cuts to save us some money against the cap. We got 1 contract extension, 1 blockbuster trade. We got, I think, 8 free agency signings, and then we have a 7-round Commanders mock draft to finish things up. Now, I want you guys to keep in mind, before we get into this offseason plan, that this is not a predictions video. I am not saying that I think all these moves are going to happen. This is an idealized version of how I would like the 2026 offseason to play out. That's why we're calling it the perfect offseason plan. Okay, it's not the most realistic offseason plan, but it's the one that I would consider the best possible outcome for the Washington Commanders. But with that said, it's not like I'm going to be trading for Patrick Mahomes or something like that, right? I'm going to keep this somewhat realistic with things that could actually feasibly happen over the course of the next few months as Adam Peters and Dan Quinn build out this 2026 Commanders roster. Okay, so we'll start here with where the Commanders are at in their 2026 cap space, which right now sits at about $90 million, depending on which source you look at over the cap spo track. They got different numbers in different projections, but most places have it around $90 million. So that'll be our starting point here. And also keep in mind that is including the $22 extra million that the Commanders are expected to get from the cap space increasing. Okay, and it could be up to $25 million, but the low estimate is $22 million. So that's what we'll do here, which puts the Commanders at about $90 million as a starting point here. So we'll start with some roster cuts, and honestly, with that much cap space, you don't have to do too many cuts if you're the Washington Commanders this offseason, but I think 2 that make a lot of sense. Marshawn Lattimore is the one that makes the most sense. I mean, that one is coming one way or another here in the next few weeks. It saves the Commanders $18.5 million against the cap. There's zero dead money. Marshawn Lattimore stinks at football. Everything just lines up perfectly there, right? And then Percy Butler, a guy that has been a safety in this building for multiple years. The safety room was in a bad spot last year, and Butler still barely played. And you can save over $2 million by letting him go. That one just makes a lot of sense to me. So when you do these two cuts, that increases the cap that we have to work with on today's video to over $110 million for the Washington Commanders here during the 2026 offseason. And you better believe we're going to be spending that money, unlike what the Commanders did last year where they had a bunch of money and really didn't spend a whole lot of it during the 2025 offseason. So we'll start here by paying our franchise left tackle, Laremy Tunsil, and we're going to get this done first things first, in the offseason, okay? Adam Peters has already said that, he's learned his lesson. Don't extend players late into the offseason because you might lose them for the entirety of training camp, just like you did with Terry McLaurin last year. So this would make Laremy Tunsil the highest paid left tackle in all of football. I think he's earned it. He's one of the best pass protectors. He did a really good job as a run blocker last year as well. He is the rock of this Washington Commanders offensive line. You traded a bunch of picks to get him last year. It just doesn't make sense to let him go after the 2026 season. You want to lock him up for the long-term future. I'm adding 2 more years to his contract with $30 million per season on each of those 2 years. Now we'll get to some players that I would bring back as re-sign candidates here. I'd bring back Chris Paul, who started at left guard towards the end of the season, but as you guys will see over the course of this offseason plan, he's actually going to be our swing guard. And for somebody that's as good as Chris Paul to be your swing guard for the next 2 years at less than $5 million per year, I think that's a really good investment. Then I'm going to be bringing back Tress Way as one of the best punters in football. I'm going to bring back Jake Moody as well. I thought he was good enough, and he's going to be really cheap to bring back. Jeremy McNichols, I think, is a good receiving back, very underrated player. I think he could be still a really good number 2 running back option for us, and he's also cheap. Just $2.6 million is his Spotrac market value right now. Then we get to Jacob Martin and Von Miller, 2 guys that I thought showed some pretty decent stuff as rotational guys. I don't think they're starting caliber dudes, but I think as rotational pieces, they're just fine, especially because they're very affordable. I'm bringing back Chris Rodriguez Jr. as a 4th running back, as you guys will see over the course of this video. Another guy that's really cheap. And then Sheldon Day, another vet minimum contract there as a depth defensive tackle heading into next season. So coming up next here on the perfect offseason plan here for the Washington Commanders in 2026. I got a blockbuster offseason trade that I would love to see happen for the Burgundy and Gold. I got some players in free agency that I would like the Commanders to sign, and then I got my 7-round Commanders mock draft that goes along with this perfect offseason plan. We'll finish today's video by taking a look at the updated lineup heading into the 2026 season that I am proposing. But before we get into the rest of today's show, check out our website here, chatsports.com/JDT, to pick up this Jaden Daniels t-shirt today. And I personally picked out this design, guys, because I think it's absolutely sweet. You got Jaden Daniels on there multiple times. You got the Commanders logo along with his signature on there. You got that nice black base on the t-shirt. So if you guys want this today, it helps out the channel. It goes chatsports.com/JDT. That link is down there in the comments and description of today's show. If you guys click that link and make a purchase, part of the proceeds go back to us here at the Commanders Report. So if you want to help us out here, those proceeds go to making our graphics better and improving our hardware. The monitors and cameras and TVs and such that we pay for here. Pays our rent, all that different stuff. So if you want to help out the channel, you appreciate the content we provide for you guys, and you guys want a new Jaden Daniels t-shirt, you can go chatsports.com/JDT to pick it up today. All right, so the trade. I'm going to be getting Jaden Daniels' former LSU teammate, wide receiver Brian Thomas Jr. here. And yes, I do believe that you're going to have to give up the number 7 overall pick to make this happen. But I'm going to get the Jaguars to agree to give me their 2nd-round draft pick at number 56. I still think you can get a starting caliber player at number 56, and Brian Thomas Jr. is the type of long-term investment that I want to make here in Washington. He's still on his rookie contract, so he's not going to be going up against the cap all that much. It would create arguably the best wide receiver duo in football with Terry McLaurin and Brian Thomas Jr. on either side of the lineup for the Commanders offense. And also he's got established established chemistry with Jaden Daniels. So I think, you make this trade, I think it's going to be more than worth the investment. I think Brian Thomas Jr. is going to become, the next great wide receiver in the NFL with Jaden Daniels throwing him the ball. And you still have the same amount of draft picks that you had before the trade happened. So for me, this is worth the investment if you're the Washington Commanders. But now we get into free agency, and I'm going to make another splash here. I'm going to bring in Trey Hendrickson. Now, I have said on this channel that I think signing Trey Hendrickson isn't the most realistic because I do think he will make more than the $21 million over just 1 year that I'm proposing here. But Pro Football Focus keeps saying that this is what he's going to go for. And, I'm getting all these numbers, by the way, from either Spotrac or Pro Football Focus market values. And if I can get Trey Hendrickson for just 1 year, $21 million, I'm going to take that. All right. I think he's probably going to get into the 30s. And that's probably the area in which I'm like, maybe you don't sign him if you're the Washington Commanders. But at this price tag, it's too much of a bargain for me not to take him on. He's an awesome one-on-one winner on the edge. He's also a great run defender with great strength. It just makes too much sense to not bring in Trey Hendrickson for this price tag. So in my perfect offseason scenario, Trey Hendrickson becomes a Washington Commander. But I'm also going to add a really good veteran slot wide receiver to pair with Terry McLaurin and Brian Thomas Jr. to form one of the best wide receiver trios in the game in Christian Kirk. And right now, Spotrac projects just a 1 year contract, just $5.5, 5.4, whatever you guys want to call it, $1 million. And if you guys saw Christian Kirk play this year, man, I think he's worth more than that. I know he's a little bit older. He's dealt with some injuries over the last few years, but when he's on the field, he is a really good slot wide receiver with reliable hands. He's a good route runner. He's a willing blocker as well, brings some good size to the table for a slot guy. I just think that he's a really good role player on a winning football team, and I would love to have him as our slot wide receiver for a year here in Washington. Then I'm going to get another weapon for Jaden Daniels in this offense, Kyle Pitts. I'm going to sign him to a 3-year deal worth $16 million per season. He was the number one receiver or tight end receiving-wise against man coverage in 2025. He absolutely cooked man coverage, and if you are playing man coverage versus the Washington Commanders, I want you to pay. So Kyle Pitts, really solid hands, really good athlete. He was a top 5 draft pick once upon a time ago for a reason, and honestly, Jaden Daniels needs his safety blanket. He's not going to have Zach Ertz. He needs somebody else in there that's a true receiving threat like Ertz was. I think Kyle Pitts can fit into that role nicely for the foreseeable future. But then I'm also going to make a splash at the guard position, and this is another situation where when I saw this projected value, I thought it was too much of a bargain not to take it, and it's Elijah Vera Tucker, the guard, formerly taken by the New York Jets. And I'm going to sign him to a 4-year deal, $12.8 million per season. That's a bargain as far as I'm concerned for somebody of his caliber, at his age, at that position. I think that's an upgrade at left guard for the Washington Commanders on day one. Then I'll go with Donovan Wilson, somebody that played in Dan Quinn's defense there in Dallas for many seasons. I'll sign him to a 1-year, $5 million deal to join the Commanders secondary while the team figures out their future at that position. Then I'm going to bring Jeff Okudah from the Minnesota Vikings, where he played under Durante Jones there with Minnesota, over to Washington as our third cornerback. If Mike Samerstrill sucks on the outside, we can just plop Jeff Okudah, who was serviceable in Minnesota's defense this year, kind of similar to a Jonathan Jones type of situation. Then I'll go with a backup quarterback here. I won't be bringing back Marcus Mariota because I don't think he particularly fits the under center style of offense that David Blau is going to want to run here. But Tyrod Taylor is somebody that's got a similar physical skill set to Jaden. He's a mobile guy that can run around a little bit, decent playmaker, good decision maker, smart guy, really good culture dude as well, and affordable. 1 year, $4 million for somebody that I think is a better fit for the offense than Marcus Mariota is now, and somebody that is a pretty good backup piece for a guy like Jaden Daniels. Then I'll go with Daniel Ekuale, a really good run defending defensive tackle to join the defensive line rotation here. He's coming off an injury, so there's a little bit of a risk, but that also means you can pay a little bit less for him. I'll sign him to a vet minimum $1.25 million deal on a 1-year contract. So make sure you guys click that thumbs up icon icon if you haven't already. If you want the Commanders to actually spend some money this offseason, I mean, last year they had a lot of cap space left on the table, okay? This year I don't want a whole lot of cap space left on the table. I want them to make the most of not paying their quarterback anything. I mean, Jaden Daniels is a super cheap quarterback right now, and he's got a star-level skill set. I think the Commanders need to take advantage of that. They need to spend this offseason. If you're with me on that, click that thumbs up icon. So now let's get into my mock draft. I've made my extension moves. I've made my trade. I've gone and made some moves in free agency. Now let's add some young talent to this Commanders roster. And with me, making that Brian Thomas Jr. trade, that means our first pick is on day 2 of the NFL draft in round 2 here at pick number 56. And I'm going to take the versatile safety out of Oregon, Dylan Thieneman, somebody that, at 207 pounds is an absolute freak of nature. He's a speed demon at over 200 pounds, and he's perfectly built for the modern National Football League. And in this Durante Jones, Brian Flores style of defense that Durante Jones is going to be bringing in here to Washington, you need guys that can be used as chess pieces. I think Thieneman can be a day 1 starter for you and can move all around the formation, and he can be a legitimate piece to the Commanders defense on day 1. Then in round 3 here at pick number 71, I'm going to take Omar Cooper Jr., wide receiver out of Indiana. He's somebody that's a little rough around the edges, but he's got all the physical talent you could want. All right, he needs to get a little bit more refined in both his run blocking technique and his route running technique. But if I trust my wide receiver coach to develop that, he's got blazing speed, really good hands, can make really difficult, tough catches at the catch point. He's awesome after the catch, and he's a willing blocker. I will give him that. He's somebody that does play with high effort. So if he can just cultivate some of the natural gifts that he has a little bit more, I think that he could be down the road a really great complement to Brian Thomas Jr., and you could be looking at BTJ and Omar Cooper Jr. As one of the better wide receiver duos in the National Football League. So I like this investment on the offensive side of the ball. Then in round 5, pick 145, I'm going to take one of the winners of the Senior Bowl this year, which is linebacker out of Pitt, Kyle Lewis. Right now the consensus big board still has him around the 145 range in terms of where everybody's ranking him on their big boards right now. So I'm going to take advantage of that. I think this guy is a day 2 type of player where he's really good in coverage, and he was awesome in the one-on-ones in Mobile this year, man. So I love Kyle Lewis. I think he'd be a great fit here in Washington and a great complement to Jordan McGee and Frankie Louvu in the Commanders' second level of the defense. Then in round 6, I'm going to take my favorite corner at the Shrine Bowl this year, period, is slot corner out of Oregon, Jaden Kennedy, or Kennedy, however you want to pronounce it. This guy is just sticky, all right? He's small, but he is really good in coverage. He's competitive as all hell, and there was nobody that could get open on this guy during Shrine Bowl week. Like, he was just absolutely shutting people down, and those are the types of people I want in my secondary. Now, obviously the size is going to be an issue, which is why I'm not taking him higher than, round 6. But, in round 6, if I can just get a damn good football player, and that's exactly what this kid is, I'm absolutely going to take a flyer on him and see if he can maybe even earn a starting job by the end of his rookie season. Then also in round 6, I'm going to go corner again. I'm going to double dip at this position, this time at outside corner, another really fast player in Devin Marshall from NC State, another Shrine Bowl guy. Awesome recovery speed, man. And, if you trust your defensive coaching staff and your defensive coordinator and Durante Jones, who was a DB's coach and a pass game coordinator there in Minnesota, if you trust those guys to develop young players, if Mike Sainristil doesn't work out, Devin Marshall with that recovery speed could be a diamond in the rough. He needs to work on his mirroring ability a little bit more, and his technique needs to get better. There's a reason why, again, he's going on day 3, but I love the raw physical tools that he brings to the table, and I'd like that as a developmental piece. Then in round 7, you found Bill Krosky-Merritt in round 7 last year. Why not go out and get another guy? And it's another Pitt Panther, Desmond Reed, who is a weapon as a receiver, man. Like, this guy can make great catches. He can run routes. He's really good after the catch, and that's kind of what the Commanders need long term. You're bringing back Jeremy McNichols in this scenario as your day 1 RB2 and kind of your third down back. Bill Krosky-Merritt is probably your future as the every down, under center type of running back. But Desmond Reed has a chance to be your future in terms of being your number 2 guy, your third down guy, and the fact that the national media is as low as they are on this guy, like, just go watch his film. Like, this guy is electric. Now, here's my mock draft haul for you guys. I got 2 Oregon Ducks, 2 Pitt Panthers. and then 2 players there with red teams, in the middle there, sandwiched in between them. But I love Dylan Thieneman with his size and speed combination, his versatility. Omar Cooper Jr. could be a future wide receiver 2 option to Brian Thomas Jr. in this scenario. Kyle Lewis can immediately plug into the linebacker rotation. Jaden Kennedy, the corner, the slot guy out of Oregon, sticky guy that could maybe carve himself out a role in year 1. Devin Marshall, a developmental outside cornerback piece, and then Desmond Reed, somebody that could fight his way into the rotation by the end of the year as a dynamic running back option and pass catcher. Now we can take a look here at my projected starting offense with this perfect offseason plan according to me. Of course, you got Jaden Daniels as your quarterback, Laramie Tunsil returning as your left tackle. You plug in Elijah Vera Tucker at left guard. That's a huge upgrade as far as I'm concerned. You still have Tyler Biotish, Sam Cosme, and Josh Connerly Jr. to round out your own line. But then look at that wide receiver room, man. That's a lot better than what we had last year. Terry McLaurin and Brian Thomas Jr. as your top 2 duo with Christian Kirk as an excellent slot option. Then you get Kyle Pitts at tight end, an excellent receiving guy. And then you got Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt at running back. And then you guys can take a look at some of the second wave players on offense. Tyrod Taylor as your backup quarterback. You've got Brandon Coleman. That's not our Brandon Coleman, F. Ponzi in the chat. But then we get Chris Paul as your swing guard. You've got Nick Allegretti as your backup center. Got Omar Cooper Jr. as a developmental future wide receiver 2 as your 4. You got Luke McCaffrey and Jalen Lane still on the team to see if they can take the next step. Jeremy McNichols is your 3rd down back. Got Desmond Reed as a really good 3rd option that can catch passes. John Bates is your blocking tight end, and then Ben Sinnott still on the team as well. Then we get to the defensive side of the football here, where you've got Quan Martin. I'm going to project him as kind of a nickel player. I think he's a better nickel than he is a safety. Maybe you don't want to completely give up on him. He was one of the best nickels in the country when he was playing at Illinois. So I'm going to project him as the starting nickel here. But then you get Trey Hendrickson at defensive end, Daron Payne and Javon Kinlaw on the interior. Dorrance Armstrong is your other defensive end. Frankie Louvu, a great fit in this Durante Jones style, blitz-heavy defense as one of your linebackers. Jordan McGee, the speedster, at the other linebacker spot. Then you get Trey Amos back from his injury. Mike Sainristil is your other outside corner, who I, by the way, think is an awesome fit for this Brian Flores style of defense. Then you got Dylan Thieneman and Donovan Wilson as your starting safety duo. Then you get to the second wave on the defense, plus your special teams guys. Von Miller and Jacob Martin would be your backup defensive ends and your rotational guys. Then you get to Johnny Newton and Daniel Ekuale as your second wave defensive tackles. You got Kyle Lewis as your 3rd rotational linebacker. Will Harris, somebody that can play nickel, can play safety, still on the team there. Josh Kennedy as your number 2 nickel. Maybe he beats out Quan Martin, who knows, in camp. Then you get Jeff Okuda as your backup corner in case Mike Sainristil stinks. Then in special teams, you have Tressway, Jake Moody, and Tyler Ott. And for me, guys, I spent a lot of my cap space here on this perfect offseason plan. I think that this is a roster that, especially with the scheme upgrades with David Blau and Durante Jones leading the way play calling wise on either side of the ball, if everybody can stay healthy, especially Jaden Daniels, Terry McLaurin, Brian Thomas Jr., Trey Hendrickson, like this is a roster that can legitimately do some damage in 2026, and I think that this is a team that could compete for a Super Bowl in 2026 next season. So now it's the moment of truth. Let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. Grade my Commanders off-season plan down there in the comments. Give me an A, B, C, D, or F. For me, I'm gonna do an A+, obviously, because it's the perfect offseason plan according to me. But let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. And thank you guys so much for making it to the end of today's video with me. I know today is a bit of a beast. We call it the Beast for a reason, but it's also one of my favorite videos I do all year long. If you guys love the in-depth Commanders content we provide for you guys here on the channel, type those real ones in the chat if you made it to the end of the video. I greatly appreciate it. And that'll be it for this year's 2026 perfect offseason plan for the Washington Commanders. Make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already for more Commanders offseason content all throughout the 2026 offseason. All right, second segment in the books. What do you think there, Ponzi? I will give the people about 3 minutes to get their questions in. Again, hashtag Commanders or Super Chat to get on the show today. Super Chat is the only way you can guarantee yourself a spot on the live show today. But Ponzi, definitely an interesting offseason plan, would you say?
I mean, if you can manage all that, Super Bowl caliber team.
Yes.
I don't know, man.
And again, it's not a predictions video. It's an ideal version of what could happen.
Yeah, the fact is that, Elijah Vera Tucker, very good guard. Brian Thomas, that offense.
Trey Hendrickson at a discount.
Why
does Pro Football Focus think that he's not one of the top edge rushers in the game? He is so good, man. He graded in the 90th percentile again this year. He was in the 90s in their grading system this year. I just don't get it why they think he's so low. But hey, if they're projecting him to be a 1-year, $21 million contract, I will gladly take that. I will gladly pay Trey Hendrickson that to be our new number one edge rusher.
You think about perfect offseason plans and all that. This is the perfect one. This is the granddaddy of them all.
And that's what the entire video is about. It's not about trying to predict it, because it's impossible to predict it, right?
Yeah.
This is just me looking at the players that are feasibly possible to attain and what would be the best version of that. And for me, that's what it looks like, man. And for me, that would be a Super Bowl caliber team. If you have Brian Thomas Jr. and Terry McLaurin, if you're able to get Christian Kirk at the price tag that Spotrac thinks he's going to go for this year, all the guys that we add to that group, I think that that's going to be an awesome team in 2026. And even if what actually happens isn't exactly what happens there, a lot of what I just laid out could happen. It is possible that they end up getting Trey Hendrickson or Brian Thomas Jr. or, Elijah Vera Tucker or, doing some of these moves that we laid out in that plan. I don't think they're going to do all of it. I think that's an unrealistic expectation, but I like the exercise of looking at what's available out there and saying this would be the ideal version of what the offseason could look like. It's one of my most enjoyable videos to put together. It takes about a full day to put it all together, but I think the end result is worth it. And hey, if the Commanders can come anywhere close to that plan, I think we're going to be in business next year.
I really think, the main core of that plan, too, is to get veterans that are, on cheaper deals that are going to bring speed. Yeah. It's not veterans that are old, Bobby Wagner. It's going to be bringing veterans that can still play. Donovan Wilson, Dan Quinn guy, he can still fly a little bit. He was hurt, but, he could still have some of that speed. I think he's barely pushing 30 at this point. But, one of those things that you need to address in this offseason is just getting better depth that is starter level. It's just one of those things where Commanders, the whole team just suffered, too many injuries. You cannot justify going to the season with the same depth that you had this season.
Yeah, I completely agree, man. You can't have your team set up where if there's just 3 or 4 injuries, you're just a terrible football team like it was this past year here in Washington. You got to do a better job getting quality depth, and I think you're going to have to spend some money in free agency this year. I don't think you have a choice, all right, because you have to have a full roster turnaround and overhaul, because so many people are leaving in free agency. When you add on Marshawn Lattimore, who's almost certainly out the door, you're going to have a lot of open roster spots heading into next year, and you got to make a lot of additions, whether it's through free agency, trade, the draft, of course. You're going to have to do a good job filling out this roster, and then there's also the added element that there's going to be a lot of new on this team next year. Not only are you going to have new players that haven't played with each other before, you're going to have new schemes. All right, David Blau is going to be trying to translate Cliff Kingsbury's stuff over to this new offense, but it's going to be a new stylistic offense where there's going to be a lot more under center. There's going to be a lot more play action. It's going to look a lot more like a Ben Johnson offense in Chicago than it looked like last year in Washington. Then on defense, you're going to be running a completely new scheme that looks completely different from anything Dan Quinn has done in the past. Going back to Dallas, it's going to look a lot more like what Minnesota runs on defense. So, new schemes, new players, everything is trying to gel together. And with that could be some growing pains, but there's also the opportunity for growth as well, which is very exciting. All right, man. Well, let's get into our final segment on today's live show. We need more questions?
Yeah.
How many do we have?
We have 7 right now.
All right, let's get 5 more questions, okay? I'll give you guys a minute. If you haven't asked a question yet, you can get on the mailbag today for free. Just use #Commanders. We need to get to at least 10 questions before we get into the mailbag today. All right. What do you guys think about that plan, though, man? Like, the Brian Thomas Jr. idea is exciting to me.
It's on paper. Like, I don't know if the Jaguars are willing to do it, but if they are.
But, I mean, listen, man, like, Jacoby Myers is a rock star for them. And he's, like, Trevor Lawrence clearly has a better connection with Jacoby Myers than he does with Brian Thomas Jr. And, like, if the Jaguars can get an additional first-round pick for Brian Thomas Jr. and they don't really feel like he's got a great connection with Trevor, like, get something for him while he still can before it's too late. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not saying it's likely or anything like. I still think the Commanders probably, if this was a predictions video, I probably predict them getting Brandon Ayuk. All right, like I just think that is probably what the Commanders are going to do. But I would prefer a Brian Thomas Jr. reunion with Jaden Daniels compared to Brandon Ayuk because it's cheaper against the cap, at least for now. He's an awesome player with chemistry with Jaden Daniels already. He's way younger. He's had way less injuries. Like, to me, I would rather trade and do a pick swap with your first-round pick to get Brian Thomas Jr. than, spending $20 million or more on Brandon Ayuk. That's
100%.
That's just me personally. I think Brandon comes with a lot of risk attached to it.
And, you think about Brian Thomas, the only thing is, there was a little bit of injuries last season, but, the only thing that really concerns you is the lack of production. But, Trevor Lawrence, I guess, just did not find that connection with Thomas. Like you were mentioning it in the video, Thomas is one of those players where, he played a lot better with, Mac Jones.
Yeah, he was. He had kind of a slower start to the season in 2024 when Trevor wasn't playing great. And then he, exploded towards the end of the year when Trevor was dealing with his injury stuff. And then Trevor comes back. Even in a Liam Cohen offense, it just seems like those two are not on the same page.
Yep.
So apparently they were shopping him at the trade deadline. Maybe their feelings have changed, but either way, I do expect the price tag to be high on a guy like Brian Thomas Jr. All right, let's get into it right now. The mailbag here on the Commanders Report Live Show is coming at you right now. It's my favorite segment of the week. It is the Washington Commanders Report mailbag here on the Commanders Report by Chat Sports. I'm your host, Jack Sperry. Can't wait to get into your questions here during Super Bowl week. And make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already to join the most interactive Commanders fan community anywhere on YouTube. We try to give you guys opportunities to have your voice heard, not only in terms of these mailbags where we take questions directly from you, but we also have interactive polls on the channel every single day. Obviously, you guys can get involved in the comments section with your fellow Commanders fans. We go live for big events such as Commanders games, the NFL draft, etc. So make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already. I greatly appreciate your guys' support. Let's dive into the questions. Starting with Zach33, a $2 super chat, says, should the Commanders re-sign Debo or cut Debo? Well, I mean, you don't need to cut him because he's a free agent. So you can either let him walk or you can bring him back, right? And with Debo, what I've said about him, and I've probably answered this particular question on 5 straight mailbags, but the answer's the same. Okay, I got 2 conditions for bringing back Debo. Number 1, he can't be your number 2 wide receiver. He has to be your number 3. He can't be number 2. He proved that this year. Especially if there's an injury to Terry McLaurin. Then the second thing that I need from Debo is for him to take a contract probably less than $10 million per season. Maybe slightly more than that, but it needs to be a team-friendly deal. You can't be paying Debo $20+ million per season to be your number 3 wide receiver. That doesn't make sense to me. So I'm open for Debo to come back. I think he's still a good player. I think he's still a really good gadget piece who's awesome after the catch. He had the highest contested catch rate of his career this year. Debo can play, but he can't be a number 1, and because he can't be a number 1, he's not a reliable number 2, because if your number 1 gets injured, then you're stuck with Debo, who's not really a route runner, and your offense kind of goes to crap. So Debo has to be a number 3, and he has to take a team-friendly deal. If we can figure something out where that's the case, I'm all for bringing him back. Unfortunately, I don't think that will be the case. I think Debo probably goes somewhere else in free agency. Then we go on from Hype Spectre here. Says, how can Adam Peters and team justify trading for veteran players, no matter how good, with so many holes and no draft capital? Don't we have to think long term? Well, I'm hoping that they learn their lesson, Hype Spectre. And if they do trade for any players this year, I hope it's not just for straight up picks. Like, I hope that they do some pick swap type of deals where, like, you trade your third round pick and in exchange you get a pick back in a lower round. And honestly, this year I'm not even sure if I'm considering trading for a veteran player unless that veteran player, or quote unquote veteran, is a young player that's still on a rookie contract. And I'm right there with you, man. But I think the way that they justified it in previous seasons is we have Jaden Daniels on a rookie contract. We want, good players on our team, and we're willing to give up draft capital to go get them. But I think this year it's going to be more about trading down, getting more picks, getting younger and faster. I think that's going to be the focus this year. At least it should be. And if that's not the focus and they go very veteran heavy again this offseason, I think it might be time to start having a conversation about Adam Peters as the GM of the Washington Commanders. $5 from Jerry Gettings. My man Jerry says, what percentage do you think this team runs a base 3-4 defense? Would that better fit the roster? Well, I mean, people get so caught up on 3-4, 4-3. It's a 4-2-5 league, man. Like, it's nickel. Like, that's what the modern NFL is. Now, you still have to, have a base formation. If teams go out there in 12 and 13 personnel, stuff like that, you're going to have to go out there in something. So, we'll see what Durante wants to do here. Dan Quinn has traditionally been a 4-3 guy, but, Brian Flores has been more of a 3-4 guy in his career. So it'll be interesting to see what their base looks like, but just knowing Brian Flores, they live in nickel, man. Like, they like to have big safety type players. They like to have multiple of those players on the field at the same time, and they don't really go to base all that often. So honestly, Jerry, I don't think you have to worry about, 3-4, 4-3. It's going to be mostly 3 safety, big nickel type of defense is what you're going to be seeing on pretty much every single play from this Washington Commanders defense moving forward. That is if Durante Jones runs his defense anything like he ran and Brian Flores has run the Minnesota Vikings over the last several years. $5 from Kobe Smith says, honestly, I feel bad for Cliff Kingsbury. He was a bit of a scapegoat for the offensive problems, and he can't seem to land a position with any other team. And maybe he has found a position by the time this video comes out. This is going to be coming out probably on Super Bowl Sunday. And we're filming this on Wednesday, so there's still a lot of time for Cliff to get a job between the time I'm filming this and the time you guys are seeing this. But, I kind of agree with Kobe here. I know Cliff, he doesn't really run a very modern pro-style offense because what do you see from a lot of the best offensive play callers in football nowadays? It's a lot of under center. It's a lot of heavy personnel. It's a lot of play action stuff. And, what is Cliff known for? Shotgun, spread, and, almost air raidy type of stuff. And in terms of the air raid, tree in the National Football League, I don't think there's anyone better than Cliff Kingsbury. I think he gets really creative with his stuff. I think he has some really good designs for screens, and he is still a very creative offensive mind, and I give him a lot of credit for coming up with some good stuff for the Commanders last year when Marcus Mariota was this team's starting quarterback and they didn't have Terry McLaurin for a lot of that time, and they were still moving the ball pretty decently at times last year. So I would have been okay if they kept Cliff, but I'm also really excited for the idea of David Blau bringing in a Ben Johnson style offense. I'm interested to see how Jaden Daniels adjusts to that style of offense because he's never played in anything like this. He's going to have to learn really how to take a lot of snaps from under center, turn his back to the defense, learn how to be a better play action passer if this is going to work. But we see, the best offenses in the league run this style of system. So maybe in the long run, this is what's best for the team. So let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. Should the Commanders bring back Deebo Samuel this year? Give me a yes or a no down there in the comment section. For today's pinned question, in just a second here, I'm going to take some time to tell you about our sponsor today at Prize Picks. And while I tell you about our sponsor, simply give me a yes or a no down there in the comment section. With that, let's have a word from our sponsor today at Prize Picks. And guys, the big game in Santa Clara between the Seahawks and Patriots is almost here. And there's no better way to cash in during America's biggest sporting event than with Prize Picks, where it always feels good to be right. And since the big game is right around the corner, that also means it's your last chance to get in on the football action before next season. So close out the year right with Prize Picks by getting $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. This week, Prize Picks has a special max discount discount for the big game live on the app right now. Drake May just needs one passing yard for the max discount to win. Just add another player to your lineup, and if your picks hit, you guys can cash in. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code CLNS. Get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS. Get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Next question coming in from Dylan says, have you heard about how Jaden Daniels is playing in the Fanatics Flag Football Championship against Tom Brady? I did, and I'm hoping he doesn't get injured, obviously, right? But we see professional hockey players playing in the Olympics. Same thing goes for, the World Baseball Classic with Major League Baseball teams. I don't see this as really anything different. And obviously flag football is flag football for a reason. It is safer to play flag football than it is to play real football. So I'm just hoping that he doesn't roll his ankle or anything like that. I'm perfectly fine if he wants to play in the flag football championships, guys. It's not something that I'm super concerned about. And honestly, I'm kind of excited to see how he does playing in flag football, which is different strategy-wise. Like, it's not the same as regular football. It just isn't. And so it'll be interesting to see how Jaden does because, honestly, he's got the skill set to be an awesome flag football player. Then we got one from Starchy. He says, do you think that the Commanders will make the Super Bowl era jerseys the away and just make the opposite for home? I do. I think that the team wants to dive a little bit more into its history in terms of the imagery without, diving too hard into, the name and, even the Native American references. I think they want to shift their imagery more towards a Roman imagery than a Native American one. Now, personally, I'd be cool if they wanted to bring back the feather and stuff like that, of course, with the consent of, the Native American communities and all that different stuff, and you do it in a tasteful way. But it seems like they just want to avoid that altogether, and they want to embrace a new kind of style, and I think they want to go with the Romans because obviously they use spears as well. They use, shields and a bunch of stuff, and a lot of cool imagery that's involved with Rome and the Romans, and that you can really dive into. But I do think they want to go to more of an older school type of regular home and away uniform. I think that's probably what we get this year. And then I think they bring in some sort of spear helmet alternate. It won't be exactly the same because I don't think they put the feather on the spear. I think it'll just be like a classic Roman spear on the helmet. And that's kind of the way that they're going to be going about it. But, I think that's pretty cool. You look at the new stadium design as well. You got all the pillars. It looks like a Roman type of monument almost, right? So I think it makes a lot of sense. And I think that's pretty darn cool, and I can't wait to see what this team does with that kind of imagery in the years to come. Then we got one from Kai. Says, I think Mikey gets so much more hate than needed. He was under horrible coaching. Once our staff improves, we're going to see him back in his rookie self. Listen, man. They drafted him to be a nickel, and like everybody, including myself, thought he was going to be one of the best nickels in the league. And he just sucks at playing nickel, plain and simply, man. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was the scheme that they wanted to run here with a lot of the man coverage stuff that they wanted to run here. Just wasn't a fit. And it is a lot different than what he ran at Michigan. It is. I think he's a better fit as an outside corner. I think he's played his best football in the NFL as an outside corner. And I'm with you, Kai. I think, once he has a full offseason to train as an outside corner, and, I think he's a great fit for this Brian Flores style of defense because they play a lot of off coverage in this style of defense. And, I think Mike can really use his instincts. He can use his eyes in this style of defense with all the quarters and palms looks that they like to run. I'm looking forward to seeing what Mike Sainristil can become in this defense with Durante Jones, and I think he will be the number 2 starting outside corner alongside Trey Amos once we kick things off in week 1 next year. So make sure you guys click that thumbs up icon if you haven't already. If you are a real one, if you love the show, want to help us out, clicking that thumbs up icon is the fastest and easiest way to do that. Tells the YouTube algorithm that you're a Commanders fan that is enjoying our content and that they should push this out to other Commanders fans like yourself. So if you're enjoying the content, you appreciate what we do for you guys here at the Commanders Report, click that thumbs up icon to help us out today. Got one from Chris. Says, Wagner on team for cheap. No. Wagner has to be done. Wagner is unplayable at this point, in my opinion. He's still okay in between the tackles. He's okay as a blitzer, but he just has no change of direction ability anymore. He's got no speed. And that's just going to be ripped apart in the modern day NFL with all the speed that's on the field, with all the running backs that can catch passes now. It's just not tenable to have a physical skill set at inside linebacker like Bobby Wagner anymore. I think, he just passed 2,000 tackles. He's one of only 3 players in NFL history to get to that mark. It's a great way to finish out your career. Because plain simply, guys, it's just an absolute embarrassment that one of the greatest players in the history of football is embarrassing himself on the field as much as he is at this stage of his career. Then we got one from the roofer guy, Triple J, says, what's the future of Scary Terry look like? Well, obviously, he's still got multiple years left on his new deal, so he's going to be with the Commanders, okay? And, if things really get bad and he's, not a good player anymore down the road and, regression hits him hard like it did with Amari Cooper, then, we could be looking at, the team letting him go early and, trying to find ways to save some of that cap space that's going to be allotted to him over the next several years. But the way his contract is set up is he's going to be in Washington for at least the next couple years unless there's a trade. So Scary Terry isn't going anywhere. Keith comes in with a question, says, was Dan Quinn's selection for 2 play callers that haven't called a play in the NFL the best for his future? It's certainly a risk, Keith. He's banking his future as an NFL head coach because usually guys only get 2 chances. Unless you're Mike McCarthy or Pete Carroll, outside of just a couple of other guys, you don't get more than 2 chances to be a head coach in this league. And if Dan Quinn gets fired because Durante Jones and David Blau suck and this team stinks again next year, he's not going to get another chance probably. So the pressure's certainly on, but I kind of appreciate the aggressive approach here where he's like, I'm going to get young, up-and-coming schematic minds at either side of the ball, and I'm going to go for it all, man. I appreciate the aggressive and the innovative thinking. And I also appreciate that he brought in a defensive play caller and defensive mind in Durante Jones who has a different philosophy to him. The Brian Flores defense is way different from what Dan Quinn has run here in Washington over the last several years. It's different than what he ran in Seattle. It's different than what he ran in Dallas. It's a completely brand new defensive system. And Dan Quinn, as somebody that got hired because he was a great defensive mind in Dallas, could have been just no, I was brought in for my defensive mind. It's my defense. I'm going to do what I like to do, all these different things. But I appreciate the fact that he looked at the Brian Flores defense in Minnesota and said, this is the future of football. That's what I want. I want to innovate. So I think Dan is an awesome culture builder. I think that he sets that foundation. And if David Blau and Durante Jones are what they think they are in terms of offensive and defensive play callers and schematic minds, the ceiling is sky high for the Washington Commanders moving forward, man, and I'm excited about it. So predict it for me down there in the comment section. Will the Commanders be back in the playoffs next year? Simply give me a yes or a no down there in the comment section. For me, as long as Jaden Daniels stays healthy, I think they're going to have a hell of a chance, and I think they're going to have a better offseason than maybe some Commanders fans think they're going to have this year. Now make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already. I greatly appreciate all of your guys' support. Enjoy the Super Bowl, guys, between the Seahawks and Patriots. Should be a great game. Looking forward to talking about it with you guys this upcoming week. So make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already. Till next time, guys. Hail to the Commanders. All right. We got any more super chats or anything like that, Ponzi? All right. We are good. So I want to thank each and every one of you guys for stopping by here this afternoon. Without you guys, we would not be able to do what we love to do every single day, and that's talk Commanders football with everybody here in this chat room. So we're going to say goodbye for the day. You guys enjoy your Super Bowl weekend. I mean, it's the last time we get to watch real football for a while, I can't wait for preseason where, we're going to be miserable again watching Sam Hartman throw 3 interceptions against vanilla defenses again, Ponzi. But, hopefully this is where this team can end up here. If not next year, then in the short-term future, because I think Jaden Daniels is a special talent. I think we've got some good players on this team. And, just 2 years ago, we were 1 game away from making it to this game that we're going to see on Sunday. So hopefully Adam Peters, Dan Quinn, Durante Jones, David Blau can figure out a plan here to get the right players on this team and make the most out of this young superstar that we have at quarterback in Jaden Daniels. So we'll see you guys next week. I greatly appreciate your guys' support. And until next time, hail to the Commanders.